Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Joined today by a gore for fun on another episode of Geeky Gentlemen Horror Month. It's like,
absolutely excellent.
Yeah, it's like real hell on the voice, I gotta say. I have no idea how the Crypt Keeper guy did it. Just like he did like beat poetry in the Crypt Keeper voice, and I can't even wrap my head around that. Anyway, today we're continuing Horror Month, and we're doing a review of what, Alfie?
We are doing a review of the recent Stephen King adaptation of It.
Chapter 1.
Yes, to be specific.
Yeah, and I feel that's needed because Chapter 2 is still in theaters at the moment. And you know, I watched this when it came out in theaters, and I remember really enjoying it and thinking, yeah, it's a pretty good horror film. Then the trailers for Chapter 2 started to drop, and I don't watch trailers, but I just... It didn't really capture my interest in the same way, and I don't think I'm ever going to go watch this in Chapter 2 in theaters. And from what I hear, Chapter 2 is a real letdown. I don't know, have you seen Chapter 2 yet?
No, I haven't seen Chapter 2 yet. Mostly just because I'm pretty busy anyway, so I only really go out to, like, the films I get, like, I'm really passionate for to make the chance. But even then, I just feel like it's one of those things where kind of the problem with it as a whole, like, even just the entire franchise, every adaptation, and even the book, is it clearly peaks at the first half. And then the majority of the book is like the steady decline in quality, but it's like a 1,000-page book.
Ouch. Yeah, I don't know. I remember watching the old television special, and it was when some friends and I were in high school, and like we were really on a good horror kick, and we decided, this one's like a classic. Everyone talks about how scary this is. Let's watch it. And it was fucking boring. The old television special is just not good. So when this came out, like, I was kind of worried it would be bad, like the old television special, and part 1 really, really impressed me, kind of just across the board. And I think that's what gave it such... Like, the fact that I had lowered expectations because of the 90s special made the first It a lot better than I feel it had any right to be. And I feel like a lot of people are in the same camp as me there. So the problem with that then becomes, going into Chapter 2, you've got all the baggage of now people are actually expecting something good. And if you just have to deliver on the weaker half of the story, that might be a problem.
Mm-hmm. It's something where they honestly might have even been better served by releasing them like almost back to back or as one giant film. I don't know how well that would have been practically or anything, but I feel like you could have cut it down enough to where you would have still had that first expectation of, oh, well, this is going to be better than the new thing, without losing the kind of sweet period of being able to sit on the other one for a year and you've kind of got over needing to see the rest of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Or save it and do it when I don't know, do it actually 27 years down the line or something, when the child actors have grown up, and then it would be another event or something like that. And then just it makes some sense to release. Oh, it's just a year apart, but I think that even that's too long or too short.
Well, it's actually 2 years. The first one was 2017. So you do have quite a gap there. And I feel like just on premise alone, there's something much stronger about Chapter 1 focusing on kids, you know? So much of what's going on in or just in the story of it feels just, you know, it's got this coming of age thing. It's got this, you know, again, Stephen King, to his credit, knows how to write kids, at least reasonably well. I feel like that's a strength he doesn't give enough credit for, because you got Stand By Me. He does a pretty good job writing kids. Admittedly, they have to be like kind of close to his generation or something, but I think he does a good job with it. But you have this like coming of age story kind of wrapped around. Then you've got this monster like intruding in on their summer, and because summer is so important to a kid, it's just it's a really good threat on multiple levels for that reason. It's like this pure memory kind of thing, and it's ruining that for them. There's like, you know, there's the whole idea of young love and writing poetry to a girl you like kind of thing. That's all kind of going on in there. And so it heightens everything. The thing about kids in fiction, you know, I'd say from adolescent to teenager, they're really, really good for fiction, because all of those emotions are just so heightened in that age range. Everything is just the most important it will ever be, even though we all know from experience it's not. But it's just everything feels bigger for characters in that age group. And so to transition to adults dealing with the same thing that they defeated as a kid, again, it's just it's just fundamentally weaker, I guess.
And I think even then, just on a base level, I think like if you want to really focus on this part and the strengths of this story, it almost does feel like you get the bit at the end and they've like vowed to come back, but this is a very standalone story where it's not like he gets away at the end, but it's not like you could make it vague enough where they get a win on it. It's not like, oh, they were defeated and in 27 years they'll come back and get it, where you're still expecting them to like, oh, this is still a threat. Is that once you beat the shit out of him when you're a child and you come back 27 years later, you've had Batman level prep time.
Yeah,
like,
that's the other thing. Shouldn't they just like fucking nuke the site or something? Just like, oh yeah, so we're
there's
just gonna, like,
some excuse that it's like once you leave, your memories go over time. But I think that's just a lame excuse for like, why does it just, you lose that sense of Pennywise, it being this more abstract, unbeatable, unknowable horror. Because when you're dealing with kids, they feel so defenseless and so out of their depth that by something jump scaring them, it makes sense that they'd have that reaction. Whereas as a grown adult, you feel a little less, come on, he's not physically harming you.
Yeah, that's the other thing about this movie that is just undeniably great, because it's the conceit of the monster. You know, Pennywise is a monster who feeds off of fear and eventually flesh, but the fear is definitely like at least the gateway or the important part that gives him the power he needs to literally feast on the young, right? And that's like such a great motivation for a monster, and it's so good in a horror movie, because so many horror movies are just these fucking like, you know, these suspense things that really, it's all there just to service the audience. There's there's very little story justification for the amount of suspense and jump scare and like creepy imagery and stuff, you know? Like how many like crazy dream sequences that don't really add anything but make for a good jump scare have you seen in horror movies, right? But that's how he's attacking them. That's how he's gaining the power over them. That's how he's getting stronger, is by attacking them with these creepy fucking moments. And again, so many of those are like really fucking dumb, but like in a good way. It's stuff that a kid would be afraid of. It's like ultra specific. It's kind of weird. It's got that feeling of like your imagination running away with you. Like with the in the library with like the Easter eggs and like the headless thing that starts chasing him. There's no logic to that. There's nothing that like really makes sense there. It's just this creepy kind of my imagination has run away with me and now I'm terrified thing that really only works for a kid. You know, you change the context to an adult and it's suddenly laughable in a way it isn't when it's a kid.
I think that's the strongest part of, I really like just in general how Pennywise is used here. Bill Skarsgård, I forget if I pronounce his name wrong, but I'm really impressed by his performance as like a horror movie villain. Like the makeup and everything is fantastic, and there's a good bit of balance between when he's just practically being a creepy motherfucker and then when he goes full CGI Abeloth type crazy monster. And I think both work really well and they're both used effectively for each what they're needed. Like when he's just talking, he's like, "Hey Georgie," like that's still really creepy. But then when his head opens up and you see a portal to another reality and rows of teeth like a shark, that's also terrifying in a very different way. And I think having a movie monster or any horror villain that's that versatile is a really strength. Like I legit think Pennywise is one of the best horror villains in the genre, simply because you can take him out of this story and you can put him in anything. The whole backstory of, oh, he's been doing this for centuries, he's everywhere. Each one of those could be a movie. If they wanted to continue this, fuck seeing the adults 27 years later, show me his first encounters with people, because there's like deleted scenes on that were filmed where he first lands and he's not quite a clown yet, but he scares this woman and he's like, "I will let you go if you give me your baby." And she gives him the baby and he eats it, and that's his first taste of it. And that's fucking crazy.
Damn. That makes me want to go watch the deleted scenes. That sounds... Yeah, that's a
They
great
filmed it.
premise. Oh my god. That's a fantastic premise, you know? God, I never would have thought of that, Alfie. That's a great point. You could do prequels to it and just like the Pennywise franchise, and it just ends with It Chapter 1 and 2, but you can get like It Chapter 0, It Chapter -1 or some shit like that. And just, keep it with kids. Never, like... Let me ask you this. Horror movies, do you prefer... Well, you're not really a horror fan in a large way, so I guess you might not even have an answer to this, but horror movies, do you prefer happy or sad ending?
I guess it just depends. Normally I do prefer a sad ending though, just because if I'm going for a horror movie, I'm normally in quite a depressed or vibe where I want to see some nihilistic shit, or I want to see just like, wow, this is exploring some really dark ideas and stuff like that. When you're in like that mood is the kind of horror movies I go for. But if there are like moments where like the ending, I think it has to be ending, there has to be a bit of sweetness to it for me to work, which I think this has, because like even though they defeat Pennywise and they go through this big journey and they all grow as kids and they grow, at the end of the day his little brother's still dead and he has to deal with that, and he died in a horrific, painful way, and there's nothing they do to change. They don't just find him like they thought they would, that childlike idea, and I think that helps a lot, and I think it took some balls to do that.
Yeah. And that's the thing for me, like, you know, if we talk about making prequels to it, I really like the idea of just, then you could do fucking bitter ass sad endings, and you don't even have to kind of have hope. That'd be beautiful. Because I do really like the killer endings on horror movies. You know, for all its faults, the first two Saw movies have just perfect endings. Oh god, I love the moment in the first Saw movie where the dude's been laying there the whole time. He gets up, starts leaving the room, and right before he locks the door, he's like, "There's a key in the drain of the bathtub." Slam, you'd starve to death. Ah, it's beautiful. I love horror movies that have like really fucked endings like that, because I don't know, there's something to it. So yeah, you could do Pennywise the film series. I mean, fucking like Annabelle the doll got a film series. Why not just do an entire prequel series based on Pennywise? I'd watch
and
it.
I think even then, you don't even have to run away with depending how far back you set it, you even get over the problem of the adults. Because if you go further enough in time, you can get superstitious motherfuckers.
Mm-hmm.
And then it works a lot better when creepy shit happens and they think it's the devil.
Yeah. That's a really good point. All right, so was there anything in particular, because we were talking about like what you were gonna pick, and you mentioned that you're not much of a horror fan. So is there anything in particular about this that really stands out to you as to what made you think of it, what made you want to talk about it?
The biggest thing for what draws me in is the lore. In horror, I tend to lean towards more like Lovecraftian things, and it kind of has that going for it. In a more looser sense, if you get into the book where he's literally on the back of a giant space turtle, there's that. But apart from that, I also really think the strongest part here, and no matter what genre you're in, if you nail this, I'll like it, is the character work. And this is such a character-focused movie. Not a lot of plot happens. Normally it is just they go to find Pennywise, they learn more about Pennywise, and then they confront Pennywise, or Pennywise scares them. Everything else that happens, all character-focused and all character development, and I really, really like that in a film, especially when like the child actors are this good.
Oh yeah. The actors in this are fantastic. I love that Stephen King, like, I gave him some credit for writing children earlier, and I do think he does a good job of it. Obviously this is an adaptation and stuff, but like he's laying a pretty solid foundation with the children here. But like for some reason Stephen King just like writes one particular kind of character, because I mentioned Stand By Me earlier, and like the kid with the glasses in this and the kid with the glasses in Stand By Me are like the same fucking kid. It kind of cracks me up. I don't know, just something worth thinking about. But you mentioned the characters, and I find that really interesting because I can't remember many of their names off the top of my head, but that's not like a thing against it in and of itself. I have trouble with names sometimes. But watching this a second time, it stood out to me that like I thought this maybe had too many characters in it, because it just seems like we kind of lose focus on some of these kids throughout the course of the movie. The Jewish kid just kind of like fades into the background for quite some time, I feel.
I can totally see what you're going through there. The biggest focus is definitely on like Bill and Beverly, and I think maybe if that was more apparent, and you maybe tone some things down to really focus in on those two as your protagonists, and then everyone else is just supporting cast, rather than this is an ensemble film, but it's very disjointed in its focus. But even then, I feel like I'm glad the cast is all there, because when everyone is playing off each other really well, it's great. It's like when it's at its best. When you get that final confrontation in the sewers, and they just beat the fuck
shit out of that fucking clown.
Right? That's just fantastic. And it's so satisfying for all of them, because they've all had that moment. So I think maybe I don't know. I hesitate to say cut anyone, but I feel like, yeah, I could see if you were forced to, maybe that would make it a stronger, more focused narrative.
I mean, it's just like, so you got all the main cast of kids, and then like even the bully gets a character arc. It's a sad character arc, but he gets one, and so there's focus on him. There's focus on the parents to some degree. There's just like a lot of characters in this. Like, fucking, are we sure this was Stephen King and not George R.R. Martin? Just damn. Hashtag Goku in Game of Thrones. I don't even know what that would...
people ask for
it. I don't even know what that would be. He kicks so much ass.
Focus, man. Focus.
Sorry. It was a joke, and now I'm thinking about it, and it's hilarious. All I can remember is like Gohan cutting the fucking T-Rex tail off and thinking about Daenerys and her dragons down, and just
wow, you guys sure like your siblings.
Yeah. Oh god. Anyway. So. Yeah, the cast for me, and it seems to be like. Again, I think it's one of those interesting things where I didn't have any problem with it the first time I watched. It's just, you're in a different headspace when you're watching for a review, and so when like something stands out to me, and like the moment that stood out to me about what's the Jewish kid's name? Max?
I believe Stanley?
Stanley?
Yes,
okay.
Stanley.
Okay. So like there's that moment where they're all entering the haunted house again. And Stanley's like left standing in the doorway. And he's like the last one that comes with, right? And I'm sitting there, I'm like, man, what the fuck was he doing the last time we saw him? And it's just, I really had to think on that one, because he just fades for a good chunk of this movie. Like, he doesn't come in the house with them the first time. He has the experience with, like, the painting. And then he's, like, gone for quite a while, doesn't come into the house with them. Gets a moment when they all go back into the house. And then, like, there's, like, a moment of increased tension when he almost dies. As they get to, like, Pennywise's lair. Like, he gets a lot of, like, just time between things happening to him. It's kind of, just really stood out to me.
I mean, there is like a lot of focus that maybe you could have gave him more to do, because I think all his scenes really do stand out. I feel like having him kind of be the one there with the most common sense. Maybe that's why he's not there as much, because he's got that fear of heights going for him, but he's also like one of the only ones who speaks logically in a horror movie. He's like, maybe we shouldn't go with that.
Right? Yeah. No, I think that's fair. I don't know. Why don't you take us somewhere on this?
So I feel like one of the ones which I think is the strongest, just narratively, and kind of also the most fucked up, is the Beverly plot, with her and her father and like all that. I think it's really interesting that Stephen King kind of has this problem where he writes kids well, but he's not necessarily the best at coming up with different ideas for girls. Specifically, the fact that everything to do with her is some way related to, she's bullied at school because they think she's a whore, her dad's got this weird sexual thing with her, that the book goes way too far with what happens with those kids and her in the tunnel. There's a lot of really awkward stuff there that you have to kind of chalk up to, okay, maybe you could have at least given us something different from the fact that she's the only girl there. But at the same time, I do feel like the performance here really does elevate the material to... I think she's probably the most emotionally strong out of everyone in the story. and when they go and rescue her at the end. But even then, I still feel like when she's in that bathroom and like all the blood comes out, and when she has to go with her father and play those scenes, it's just really like heartbreaking and also interesting. I think like out of all the characters, I don't know if you had a favorite, but I had to say a favorite, it'd probably be Beverly.
I think that's fair. I do think she's got a really interesting character portrayal here. I think that it's one of those cases where I feel like the actress is doing more than the script, for what that's worth, because it is just like the most typical thing. You know, Ruben and I were talking about this at one point, where so often you'll take female character and put them in sexually victimized circumstance in order to show that person doing this is pure scum and evil and hero save day, yay, good guy. And I'm just like, okay, I mean, it's not that you can't write, sexual assault scenes. It's not that you can't have rape scenes, but can we have it, like, actually have some weight to it as opposed to just easy motivation? Like, it is a really traumatic thing and a women's issue. It should probably mean a little bit more than just easy motivation, right? Like, so here's the question I have. Does her father need to be a rapist or a molester or whatever for the story to work?
I feel like he has to be abusive in some way. Mm-hmm. But going that far, I mean, there is a lot there, specifically with, like, that happens to her with her father, and then that leads to the school thing, and that leads to her insecurities about all of that, and then when she actually does have she like has like a crush on Bill and he returns, that it kind of there's something being explored there. It's very specific, where if you do change that, you do kind of have to rewrite everything about her. But I think maybe you could have even gone with something where it's more her father's trying to see her there as like a replacement of her mother, but not in the sense where it's like sexual, but in a sense where he's just very dependent on her, and that's very taxing for her at her age, having to basically look after her father or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, you make a good argument that the sexual predation is a part of the character, and it's kind of this conflicting thing for her, given that she's got, she's going through puberty and stuff, and so she's feeling these desires for the first time. That is a fair point, that she's now feeling these things that she's also traumatized by. That's a fair point, and I'll give it to it. But it's just, in general, it's such a fucking trope of a thing to do with female characters that it's like, even when it can't, you can make an argument that it's justified, it feels so exhausted,
Oh, definitely.
And so that's the thing, is like, did it need to happen for the story to work? And, maybe I am being too harsh. Maybe it isn't just easy motivation. I think you do make a lot of good arguments there about, like, how it's informing other things about her character, and it's not just insert easy, like, this guy's a bad person kind of thing. So yeah, I think that's a fair point.
It would have been one thing that I think maybe would have, because you see stuff like this happen all the time, where she's bullied at school because the kids don't think you're pretty enough, or you don't make makeup enough, and then also her dad abuses her as like the side thing. I think that the fact that that's both of them are intrinsically tied to each other, and then everything going on with the puberty thing and having a crush for like the first time and all that thing is what it's playing up specifically with her. And I think that also is kind of because everyone's kind of got, it doesn't quite fit as nicely one-to-one as every kid's got like a fear you get through going through puberty, and like that's what it represents, because some of them are quite specific, but I feel like there's some intention with that being played, of him being this abstract force against young kids, adolescents, teenagers, and I think that works specifically well. Like, again, go back to the point why it doesn't work so much with the adults, because you're not just making him a scary monster, you're telling a story there, you're telling an emotional thing from like Stephen King's own experience of, these were the feelings I grew up, and it felt like this horror monster was stalking me, and none of it made any sense, and some things were weird and crazy, and all these emotions are bubbling up and everything, but you finally get over it and you move on, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I think there's something there to that. I don't know in general, but how did you feel about the like the pacing of this film, because I always think that's interesting when you adapt books. You can go through so much, and obviously the book in it is more one-to-one of like, okay, so we start here, we go there, we go there, and like it's back and forth flashbacks, whereas this is just all the past. I feel like by doing that, it really made it feel like a stronger piece. But I don't know, did you feel like it dragged on in two parts, or they should have elaborated some things, or?
I think there's like, I think the weirdest pacing thing, and this is kind of comes from writing horror myself. I think the weirdest pacing moment is something that I've definitely picked up on, which is if you create the scariest place in the world, you gotta really motivate your characters to go there, and then you gotta really motivate them to ever go back. And like that was I think the weirdest pacing thing that stood out to me, is like, was that even truly necessary? When they go into the haunted house and they get just wrecked. He fucks them over so hard. The moment with the three doors, not scary at all. Scary, very scary. Is a really like darkly funny moment. Like there's that house is just awful for all of them. And then they leave, and then they come back, which is just, come on. I'm sorry, Beverly dies. Like, there's no way they'd go back. That's crazy. And I don't know. To be fair, I feel like the justification's there. I feel like there's enough to justify they have to, because especially because Bill has that whole moment of like, what are we just gonna ignore it? What happens when one of us goes missing then? Huh? Are we just gonna ignore that? And so when one of them goes missing, yeah, now they're spurred on to action, because until that happened, they'd all kind of resigned themselves, because they'd all kind of resigned themselves to not going back, to ignoring it like their parents, in order to just survive, because they were brave together, but they couldn't be brave on their own, which is it's a great thing, and it does really work with the journey of friendship that exists in this movie. But again, it's a weird pacing thing, especially in horror, to ever go back. Like, that is the thing. And I mean, you can make it work. You can make it that brave choice, but it's like that really hard sell for me at that point. So that was about the only like major pacing issue I noticed. The weird thing about this movie is it just spends a lot of time just being creepy for, creepiness sake. And we talked about it a little bit already. That creepiness really, really does work here because of the justification of the monster.
Yeah, it's like if you're writing a Scarecrow story, you get to play with so much more visual or crazy ideas of, okay, wouldn't this be cool? And you don't have to justify it, because the person justifying it is doing it because, oh, that's how they get their kicks. This is how this thing feeds. This is his objective, is to make a horror movie, basically. Mm-hmm. So that's a really strong narrative choice by Stephen King there to make this creature. It helps tell a lot of this story, and it helps make everything tie together and work, where you don't need to necessarily, you can have the protagonist kind of sit on their laurels for a bit and let them be kids, because they aren't actively needing to do anything, because it's the monster hunting them, but not hunting them in a way where, oh, they're going to meet a monster, he's just going to kill them. He's actively having to stop and scare them, because if he doesn't scare them, he can't kill them, which again is a really good kryptonite to justify how they eventually beat it. It isn't one of those things where like, wow, Pennywise can do all these things, how am I supposed to buy that these kids can just beat the shit out of him at the end? But you throw in that justification where he's like, well, if people aren't scared of him, he's basically powerless. I think that really works. Mm-hmm. And I think there is something to, I guess, to go to your earlier point of like why they go back in the house, I feel like I wouldn't have bought that if Pennywise didn't get hurt in the house and they saw him. That's the first time they saw him get injured. So that's when he goes from being, oh my god, this is the scariest, most horrifying thing, to It can bleed. We can kill it.
It bleeds. No, I think that's fair. I think that's a fair point. It's one of those things though. It's just that's like I know that because I wrote it. You know, my friends and I in high school, we tried to make horror movies. They sucked. But one of the things we discussed while we were writing them is like, all right, so then there's a house party because we fucking put that in all our movies for some reason. There's a house party, and then this murder happens there, and so then the next night they're in the house again, and I'm just like, why the fuck do they keep going there if someone died? Who would do that?
Like Zoink Scoob, why do we keep going back here?
Yeah, like I made my friends realize how stupid that was, because like one of the things we were doing is it'd be horror, but it'd also be like very like knowing comedy, and so we'd like very much like we wrote a scene where it's like a guy and his girlfriend, and you're thinking, okay, so they're gonna be like the couple that survives the whole thing. And the guy just like throws his girlfriend at the monster and runs the fuck the other way, because that shit would eventually have to happen, in some situation like this, and so it's dark funny, but it's still good for horror. But yeah, it's just that motivation to ever go back, like there are places I just don't even want to fuck with, like around town. And nothing's bad's ever even happened to me there. I'm just like, I ain't fucking with that. Nope. I just like there's a closet at my work that one time when we were moving a bunch of shit around, we had to like put a door off its hinges in, and like I opened it and just like a shit ton of spiders came running out, and I was like, I don't really have a thing about spiders, but I ain't opening that fucking door again, man. I'm just not gonna do it. So like that motivation to go back is something that always like it's always something I notice, whether or not it justifies itself. I'll put it that way.
Mm-hmm. I think that works. It's something where you kind of just have to almost suspend your disbelief at that point to how brave are these kids. I think maybe that's even a testament to like the writing on display and like the performances are where you really do buy these are real kids. So when they do that almost horror movie trope of when they do go back into house, it feels almost more unbelievable because up to that point they had felt so, oh, these are just regular kids you could have met anywhere and they react like regular kids. And I guess maybe some of that even is intentional. Like up to that point they are just kids, but when they make that decision, they become like the heroes of the story, and this is the show. Like you can be brave and you can conquer all your demons. It just takes that initial push. So I think there's a back and forth you can make on it. At the same time, I definitely do. It almost even goes back to like the Beverly thing, where this has inspired so many other things, and it takes things from other things as well. And the book came out, I don't even know, 1986, yeah, okay. Book came out in 1986, movie comes out 2017, and then the other series came out in 1990. So there's a lot of time covered between these things. A lot of things have taken from it and inspired it before you get to here. So I guess, do you think maybe some of that is coming to this, for all its faults and being a good adaptation, it's almost suffering because it was so big when it first happened?
That's always the rub. Especially with horror. Horror as a genre can be so influential and so derivative. Like, I don't like Halloween, the movie. I fucking hate that movie. I think it's boring. And the reason why is because I didn't watch Halloween until I was like 20. I didn't see it as a kid or anything. I just never got around to it, and when I finally watched it, I've seen this shit a million times, and it doesn't matter that it did it first. You know, like the fact that horror can be so derivative and like one good idea can inspire 12,000 movies, sometimes all within the same franchise. Saw come up again. Like it it can be so derivative that it can really be a downer on the overall quality of a film for that reason, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so you might be right. It might be that like all of these choices were at least not as played out in 86 as they are in 2017 to 2019, you know?
Yeah, I feel that's something where it's a movie that, I guess because the time period's so well done, and obviously there were probably great child actors back then, but I sincerely doubt they would have been that that bar has been up so much in recent years, which is really great to see. But I think this is a movie that you could have only really, especially with the effects to pull them off, made around this decade, maybe early 2000s if you're pushing it, and really pulled off the way they're specifically doing it here. So maybe it was always going to inevitably have that problem. I think as long as this has already been a big success, even if Chapter 2's not performing as well, this on its own is very standalone, and it's kind of brought in the Stranger Things generation as well, which is so derivative from it, and that also blew up. So I think a lot of people's first experience with a lot of these tropes are going to be this film, because I can see this being something that will be kind of viewed as, the first part at least, as like a very important horror film for this time period of the 2010s, 2020s. I feel like that would be something where maybe with age, some of these repetitive things will disappear. Maybe not. Maybe we'll just start copying this even more because it's already copying other things, and yada yada until we just eventually just reach the apex of that. I don't know, but I think just in general, I admire, at least, even if some of the tropes are played out, I think the use and the creativity on display and the sheer weirdness of how they do get played out is what puts it above those being problems for me. Because like the freaking monitor, like how many films have you seen when there is like there's a scary thing in a screen monitor and it moves once and it moves once and it moves once and it starts moving? Like, that's been done so much, but the fact that he actually comes out
Oh yeah, starts fucking crawling around the garage and stuff, that was pretty good. Like, that's the thing, is this movie has like really earned jump scares, which is just, oh my god, that never happens. Jump scares are so are so tired, and so just it earns it, you know. It manages to make it feel necessary, and it manages to make it happen, which is just it's a good feel. I do like that stuff. Again, yeah, you're not wrong. The visuals here, it's not just that it like earns it. It displays it so perfectly, in just a really, really strong way. God, some of the like the presentation on here, like the leper, his fucking eyes pussing out is gross. The fucking, again, just everything in the house is fantastic. When he comes out of the fridge, ooh, I love it.
I think that's one of the things that, just specifically, again, I'm going to just gushing over Pennywise the whole time, but what I really like about the performance here is, like, I've never seen the full thing because I'm just like not interested, but I've seen some clips of Tim Curry's Pennywise, and Tim Curry's fantastic, but he's very clearly just having fun with it, and it's tongue-in-cheek, and he's more funny. He's more like the Joker, if anything, or like a more tame version of that, if that even makes sense. Whereas this, someone described it, and I think it's the best way to describe it, is it's a creature that doesn't understand how to be human quite, so he's got these really weird tics when he speaks and how he looks, and his eyes aren't fully focused because he can't quite get it right, and that's the most terrifying thing to me, is those little things, which are all the performance.
Yeah, I guess I hadn't noticed that the eyes are always kind of off-kilter, aren't they? That's fucked.
And the funniest thing as well is the actor can do that, and one of the other, I think it was the director, he didn't know he could do that. He thought it was just post. So when he's like, oh, there's a picture of it online, it's the funniest thing. It turned into a meme. He's just like, oh, yeah, I can do it. Watch. And he's just like, ah!
That's really funny. Oh man. Yeah, I think the performance of Pennywise is, yeah, it's really strong. It helps that it's like enhanced, so it's not subtle, is it? It's enhanced so naturally with the CGI. You know, like, if it were an all CG monster, it'd probably look a little silly or something. And if it were all done practically, it might look a little dated or like overly nostalgic. But like this, it blends really practical things really well with just these intensely creepy digital effects. Like, again, him coming out that fucking fridge and the fucking dancing clown bit is, there's just something to it. It looks like maybe he's just doing that dance, but his head's just a little too still, you know? It's the really interesting way that all kind of comes together.
I think even just you mentioning that has kind of made me think of why that works so well. Is the human eye can always kind of tell, like, no matter how good CG is, it's why I always kind of when people complain about it too much, because even if it's the most best top of the end CGI, you think normally you won't notice it in the moment, but if you are looking for it, you will find it. It's just how the human eye works and how your brain perceives things. But that really works to the benefit here, because the fact that this is a creature putting on like almost like an illusion, the fact that like glitches and any technical insecurities or anything that doesn't quite look and blend with the background is part of the strength of it feeling unreal. And like, what is this? Is this in my mind? Is this playing? What the hell is happening? I think that's a really clever use of the medium of CGI as something that's not like a cheat, but as something that is enhancing it, that you couldn't get with practical effects, because you're like, oh, that's there. That's always going to be there. Whereas CGI, you kind of go like, what is that? Is that real? Is that practical? Is it CGI? I think adding that question really enhances a character like Pennywise.
I'd agree with that. I do think that the two blend nicely into the kind of the undercurrent of CG. What else can we talk about with this one?
How did you feel about, I guess, the secondary antagonist, or like the bully and like the parents and all that stuff, like all the things that are background to the town, but not Pennywise or the kids?
Again, I feel like that's where the movie like has too wide a focus. I would have been fine if the bullies never came back after they cut that kid open, you know? Like, it's just, they get so, like, obviously it's the main bully's character arc that his father's kind of like scared him and made him kind of lash out and try to get power in some way, shape, or form. And as much as I do really enjoy the scene where his father shoots a gun at his child and says, "See what happens when a paper man folds," like, just introduce a little fear. I'm like, that's a really good line, and I like that feel of like, yeah, shoot at that child. Oh wait, like that's a really good reaction that I really enjoy having to a thing of like the making me do that double take. Because it's just when you feel like you got, you know, I enjoy that. So as much as I enjoy some of the stuff surrounding the bully, and I'm always in love with the bully getting their comeuppance thing. It does just feel a little too unfocused, and like you didn't necessarily need that for the rest of the movie, and that time that's spent on him probably would have been better served on some of the other characters. Like, you know, like Mike, I feel Mike gets kind of criminally underdeveloped in this movie. And maybe some of that screen time that got put on the bullies should have gone to him.
Yeah, especially given I mentioned about Beverly, but no, he's got the most fucked up backstory.
Yeah, it's like I he just kind of again he kind of fades into the background quite a bit. Like he's the last member of the loser squad to get introduced, or to join up rather. He's just so secondary to so much, um, and like it's not that he doesn't get a moment because obviously he takes out the bully and that's like a kind of a big deal. It's a little fucked up that like another kid dies and no one's gonna come after Mike for it, but whatevs. I guess that's just dairy. It's like, oh yep, chalk up another one.
Put him on the list, Dave.
Yeah, right. Ah, damn, we made it 3 days without any more children disappearing. Take it back to 0.
You know what someone needs to make? Someone needs to make the spin-off of this that isn't just a prequel, but just like 2 cops in Derry, but like almost like a Hot Fuzz situation where someone gets brought over and it's played just as a comedy where it's just like, oh yeah, that just happens here. We got a nice town, killer clown. We got a bingo going on. Every time a kid's born, we make bets on what age they're gonna live to.
That's fucked.
I'm coming up good.
Ah, damn it, 23C. Yeah, fair enough. No, so it's just one of those things. Like, I feel like the bullies are really weird because on some level one of them's used to kind of like show you the power of Pennywise, but at the same time, ain't no way in hell you're gonna convince me that kid was more scared than any of them were in the house. And yet Pennywise couldn't eat any of them. What? Come on.
Uh-huh.
Get the fuck out. So like it's almost like a little bit of a weakness for the bullies. On the other hand, the parents, I do feel like what we see of each of their parents works really well. Stanley's dad gets like one line, but it kind of just shows you everything about that kid's relationship with his father. And I thought that was kind of good. What's the hypochondriac?
Bill's like Eddie.
Eddie. Yeah, Eddie's mom is probably the parent that gets the most screen time, which is kind of funny. I love when she just goes off on the kids when they break his fucking arm because I've fucking been there. It's like, we broke something, guy's mom. What'd you break? Your son's leg. What were you doing? We were on the trampoline, and then, the kid that's way older than the rest of us came over, and he started jumping, and then that's catapulted Sam up, and he broke his fucking leg. This is what happened. Oh my god! Like that. Been there. That's always fun. So that was the most relatable, probably, but I thought she worked there. I really do feel bad for Beverly because apparently just the whole town thinks she's a slut, and I'm like, what?
Uh-huh.
Like even the parents? How do they know about the rumors? God damn it!
It's just one of those small town American towns where everyone knows of everyone. It's just how I imagine everything is.
I love that the Brit is lecturing me, the Fort Wayne native, about small American towns.
I mean, let's just come on now. I think I know a thing or two. Have you been to Venice?
Oh my god. Yeah.
Just outside of Texas. Yeah, it's one of those things where I like the idea that everyone in this town knows, and they just have reached the point of not caring because it's one of those things they just give it up. Where every single the kids go missing and they've got some hope, but they know what's happened because it's happened so much over so many years that if you live here, this is just the reality, and you just have to tone it down. And I think that you go for a lot of things with Pennywise as being the embodiment of all these things for the kids to bring them together. I think that's a pretty good statement for using Pennywise as just like all the horrible shit that happens in just society and that people just don't care because, well, that's the way things are. And it's that kind of defeatist, awful, makes my blood boil kind of mentality, which is so rampant, sadly. And I really like that aspect because it's not touched on a lot, and maybe it is touched on more in the second one when they actually are old enough to deal with that kind of stuff. But I feel like if you were going to do like those Pennywise prequel things, I think you could do a really good story about the town that is hopeful and everyone tries to go get him and they just get broken down, and then you get the sad endings. You get like 2 films of just 2 attempts and broken sad endings where their kids get mauled and they don't win and just face to sit with that, and then you cut 50 years later and it leads to this town.
Mm-hmm. And that's the kind of the interesting thing, because one of the questions you have to ask is like fucking like Van Helsing, why the fuck don't they just move?
Exactly.
But it works a little bit better here because he goes to sleep for like 27 years, so like every 2.5 decades a bunch of kids go missing, and then it's normal for a long time, and it's just like it just kind of fades into rumor. It's like, oh yeah, all these kids went missing, I heard it was a monster. No, that's crazy, it was just there's some psycho running around. And then by the time the kids growing up with those legends are old enough to do anything about it, they've just kind of like, oh yeah, it's been years since anyone's gone missing in this town. And then it just all starts up again. And that's like, it lends into that humans are quick to forget kind of thing. And I like that. That's a good thing to lean into with horror. It works really well.
Mm-hmm. I think most of the things have been covered. I guess maybe just on I don't know, more, because again, this is an adaptation of something that's already been done before. Do you have anything from the previous one that you've watched which you do like a little bit more than this, or are there any things here which you feel like maybe they could have took the chance to change this and not done like a straight adaptation? Well, like, what you feel on that front?
Really, there's nothing in the first one that interested me. The original It from the 90s was just fucking boring. Yeah, it doesn't help that they had to like work around TV censors and stuff, but still. As far as, is there anything in here that I don't think they should have adapted? Or they should have just taken the chance to outright change it? Part of me leans on the Beverly sexual assault thing, but they do enough with it here that I feel it's justified, even if it's not the choice I would have made, kind of thing. Like, it makes me feel uncomfortable, and so on some level that's what horror is meant to make you do, but I don't know. If you had to adapt it in this day and age, was that the only choice you could have made? And yeah, you're right, you'd have to rewrite her entire character arc through the whole movie, but is there any reason you shouldn't? I don't know. It's something worth thinking of, at least. Mm-hmm. Other stuff that I wish they didn't include or wish they'd made different choices on. No, not really. I kind of talked about the bullies, and that's probably the only thing. And I don't even know if that's from the book or if that's just done for the movie.
I think most of this is 1-to-1. The only major scene that got taken out was the sewer orgy.
The sewer orgy?
Oh, you don't know about that?
No.
Oh my god. Alright, I'm sad I had to bring this up. I'm sorry, I'm just going to really make you view Stephen King differently. So, after they kill Pennywise, they can't get out of the sewers. and they're just like, what are we gonna do? We're so scared. So then all of them have sex with Beverly, one after the other, and then that gives them the bond to get out.
Okay, Stephen King.
Like,
That's a really weird choice.
I mean, that's the understatement of the fucking year with that phrasing. Yeah, so that's happening.
I don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. I'm glad they left it out. I'll put it that way. I'm glad they left it out of literally everything. If anything, they should re-release the book and leave it out of that. Oh, okay. Okay. Let's go ahead and go on to ratings then.
Sorry, folks, just broke Ian at the end of the podcast.
I mean, it's just like there's.
Someone was gonna comment it. I'd rather you found out through me, and I'm the person responsible for your emotional turmoil than anyone else.
I don't fucking know, man. That's just weird. Okay, whatever. Let's go ahead and go on to ratings. I'll go first, and I will rate It Chapter 1 4 out of 5 refrigerators that Pennywise crawls out of.
Fair enough. I quite like this. I think it's something where it's you're legit, even if you don't like the second one or anything. I have no interest to watch the second one. I probably will one day just out of curiosity, but this on its own, you can just put it in and play. It's very watchable, I think, is the good time, and I think that's something rare with horror movies. You normally have to be in a mood for it, but this, I feel like you don't want to watch it every back to back too often, but I think give it enough space, and this is something where you can appreciate some more things because it is so packed. And although that might impact some feeling, it can also be, oh well, but no, this time around. So there's strengths to that approach at least. So I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 Georgie arms.
Yeah, that's sad. Okay. Well, Alfie, I'm a little torn, and so I'm gonna consult you on which one you think you might have more to say on, or if you haven't seen one and you want to watch that instead. So I kind of want to either do Trick or Treat or the Brendan Fraser Mummy movie.
Well,
do you think you lean more toward one or the other? Have you seen either of them?
I haven't seen either of them.
Oh, that's interesting.
But it's one of those things where, like, I'm assuming Trick or Treat's more Halloweeny and the other one's a mummy. So again, you'll be what? Here's the thing. What thing will you think would get a better reaction out of me?
I don't know. Like, it's okay. Like, let me put it this way: The Mummy is just like a straight film. Okay, it's it's more actiony than horror, but it's got some horror elements. And then Trick or Treat is kind of more like an anthology. So does one interest you more than the other? Are you in the mood for like several small stories, or are you in the mood for 90s Brendan Fraser goodness?
Let's go with the small stories one.
Okay, Trick or Treat it is. Everyone, thanks very much for watching. See you next time. Until then, I'm the Philosopher.
And I'm a geek for fun.
And we are your Geeky Gentlemen. And we will be... No, fuck me, goddamn. And we are your Ghouly Gentlemen. And we shall be discussing things. Ha 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 ha!